Crockett. We're going to give them both an IQ test.
Only service that he's giving to us is driving our country apart. But I'm sorry, when you're at war, you're not worried about your outfit.
The atmosphere in the Phoenix Convention Center was electric, the air thick with tension. The stage lights shone brightly over the two podiums, separated by a modest table, and cameras capturing every moment. The crowd, a mix of business suits, mega caps, and voters hoping for change, waited for the live broadcast to begin. The debate between President Donald Trump and Representative Jasmine Crockett was being aired across multiple networks. No scripts, no rehearsed safety nets. Jasmine Crockett had prepared herself for this.
You want to convince your followers that you should be a dictator too, that you should never leave the White House because you don't believe that elections should take place? I don't really understand what is going on, and I don't know what it's going to take to get people.
Her team warned her about Trump's unpredictable style, his ability to steer discussions away from policy and into personal jabs, but she was determined to stay focused. The audience was diverse, from young families to veterans, and the energy in the room was palpable. It felt like something unscripted was about to happen. After some predictable back and forth on border security and the economy, the conversation shifted to health care. Crockett, who had been vocal about reforming rural health care.
Hospitals are shutting down, and in rural America, you don't have as many providers either. And so literally, if you have this specialized cancer, you can't stay at home.
Began explaining her plan, but Trump interrupted with a remark meant to throw her off balance, suggesting she focus on her own household instead of telling the country how to run its hospitals. The jab wasn't subtle, and it drew murmurs from the audience. Crockett, calm and composed, let the weight of the remark hang in the air before responding. She didn't flinch. Instead, she addressed the larger issue of leadership. She reminded the audience that leadership wasn't about tearing people down. It was about integrity and service. She made it clear that she wouldn't let her worth be defined by her marriage, nor would she allow women's lives to be reduced to personal attacks. The crowd responded in applause. Trump, visibly irritated, tried to cut in, but Crockett wasn't done. She made her point clear. If he wanted to fix America, it started with respect. Her words were precise and sharp, and with that, she pivoted back to the issue at hand, rural health care. She pointed out that while the president talked about economic growth, the people in small towns were still struggling to afford their medicine and keep their home. The audience's energy shifted in her favor. As she continued, she framed Trump's attack as an example of how politicians often avoid addressing real issues by personalizing the conversation. Crockett emphasized that the American people needed leaders who focused on their needs, not their egos. By the time she finished, the room was filled with applause, some of it from Trump's own supporters who seemed to be shifting their allegiance. As the debate moved to audience questions, the crowd's mood tilted further toward Crockett. A man stood up addressing Trump directly about prescription costs. His question, a challenge to Trump's claims, drew applause for Crockett. A nurse then asked Crockett about keeping rural hospitals open, and her response about fully funding hospitals and holding insurance companies accountable resonated deeply with the audience. Crockett wasn't just defending herself anymore. She was dismantling Trump's entire narrative. She stayed steady, driving home the point that real leadership focused on people, not personal attacks. Trump on the defensive tried to regain control, but Crockett had already shifted the conversation away from him and toward the real issues that mattered to the American people. By the time the final question came, a young veteran from Nevada asked about the VA system. Crockett's reply was sharp. If the system was broken, it needed fixing, not emptier promises. The applause was louder than before, the momentum squarely in her corner. In her closing statement, Crockett delivered a powerful message to every young person watching, especially young women. Don't let anyone define your worth by something they can use against you. Leadership, she said, isn't about who shouts the loudest, but about standing firm with purpose. The crowd erupted, and Trump's attempts to counter her were weak, his smirk fading as he realized the narrative was no longer in his control. The next morning, headlines and social media erupted. Crockett's 47-second response had gone viral, reshaping the political conversation. She hadn't just won the moment, she had taken a blow meant to knock her down and used it to stand taller. By the time she got back to her hotel, her team was already fielding interview requests from every major outlet. Crockett's message resonated with millions, especially young women who saw her calm, confident response as a model of strength. In the quiet of her hotel room, Crockett reflected on the night. She had shown the world that true leadership wasn't about making personal attacks, but about addressing the real issues that affect people's lives. This moment was more than a victory for her. It was a reminder that leadership comes from standing firm, not just when things are easy, but when they're hard. In the end, the lesson was simple. Don't let someone else write your story. In politics, as in life, it's not about never being attacked. It's about knowing who you are and ensuring everyone else knows it too.